At our 5th anniversary dinner, my husband casually announced he was leaving me for my younger sister. "I'm in love with Ashley," he said, swirling his $200 Cabernet like it was just small talk. I smiled, calmly placed my napkin on the table, looked him dead in the eyes, and said, "Enjoy your meal." Then I stood up, walked out, and left him to choke on the mess he'd just created. What Greg and Ashley didn't know was that I'd been quietly collecting evidence of their corporate espionage for months. 3 days after that dinner, I sent everything to the FBI, the SEC, and both of our companies. Suddenly, they weren't just out of a relationship. They were out of jobs, out of reputations, and soon, out of freedom. The look on Greg's face as I walked out of Canlis, Seattle's most ridiculously pretentious restaurant, where the entrees cost more than my first car payment, almost made the betrayal worth it. Almost. He was expecting tears. Screaming. A dramatic meltdown straight out of one of those reality shows he claimed to hate but secretly watched on his iPad. Instead, I gave him silence. Just the soft click of my Louboutins. Yes, the ones he said were way too expensive, but somehow my sister could afford the same pair echoing off the marble floors as I vanished into the rainy Seattle night. "Lauren, wait." He called after me. But I was already sliding into my Uber, silently thinking whatever gut instinct told me to book my own ride, just in case. 5 years of marriage, and he still didn't know me well enough to guess I wouldn't make a scene. 5 years, and he still hadn't figured out that quiet doesn't mean weak. It means strategic. Quick update. I've been reading through everyone's comments. Thank you for the support. You all have been incredible. Some of you asked if I knew about the affair before the dinner. The answer is complicated. I suspected there was emotional cheating, but the espionage? That completely blindsided me. Ever found out something even worse than the original betrayal? Yeah, let me back up a bit. Greg and I met in law school at UW. He was charming, driven, always juggling a Starbucks cup in one hand and a constitutional law book in the other. That smug little half smile like he knew something no one else did, it pulled me in. After we graduated, I got hired as in-house counsel at Meridian Tech, and Greg landed a spot on their management track. Our friends dubbed us the power couple. My sister Ashley? She was always the unpredictable one. 6 years younger. According to our parents, stuck in my shadow. While I was mapping out a career path, she was switching majors at WSU, like changing filters on Instagram. But when she finally graduated and scored a job at Next Gen Innovations, Meridian's top competitor, I was genuinely thrilled for her. I even helped her prep for the interview. "You've always been the good one," she said over brunch at Portage Bay Cafe 3 years ago. "I just want to figure out who I am." I remember nodding, thinking how grown up she sounded. Our marriage wasn't perfect, whose is? But we had a rhythm. Work hard during the week. Hike the Cascades on weekends. Monthly dinners with my parents. Occasional date nights at the newest Capitol Hill spot. Then about 8 months ago, Greg started traveling more. San Francisco, Denver, Chicago, always glued to his phone, always being pulled away for urgent work calls. The first red flag? He came home from Denver wearing a new cologne. Not wildly different, but definitely not the Tom Ford I'd gifted him for Christmas. He claimed the airline lost his bag, so he had to buy hotel toiletries. Seemed plausible, but I logged it in my mental file. Then came the texts he'd swipe away when I walked in. Late nights at the office. Ashley suddenly being too busy for our weekly sister calls. Mysterious restaurant charges I knew weren't from meals we'd shared. It might have gone unnoticed, until I got assigned to Meridian's new data security task force. We spotted odd access patterns on our secure servers, downloads of sensitive files during strange hours, by someone with high clearance. And wouldn't you know, those times lined up with Greg's so-called late nights. Still, I couldn't accuse without hard proof. So, I did what any corporate lawyer would. I started documenting. I installed tracking software on our shared home computer, legal in Washington, since I owned the device. I matched Greg's business dinners with Ashley's Instagram stories. Slowly, the pieces fell into place. I didn't want to believe it. But then came the final nail. One morning, I accidentally grabbed Greg's company laptop instead of mine. His password? Ashley's birthday. With an exclamation point. Amateur. What I found made me nauseous. Emails to a dummy account, packed with confidential Meridian files, plus messages coordinating drop-offs with Ashley. Even worse were the notes about life after this deal goes through. They weren't just cheating. They were selling trade secrets. Together. It was betrayal on every level, personal, professional, and familial. I could have blown it up right then. But the lawyer in me needed an airtight case. So I played the part. For 2 months, I acted normal. Smiled at dinners while gathering evidence. Kissed him goodbye while copying files. Chatted with Ashley about her cool new projects, secretly recording everything. Again, totally legal in Washington with one-party consent. Then came our anniversary dinner. When Greg suggested canless, I should have known something was off. He always complained about their tiny portions. Still, I said yes. I figured it'd be the perfect setting for my grand reveal. I spent 2 hours getting ready, black Diane von Furstenberg dress, flawless makeup, just the way he liked it, natural but polished, whatever that means. My phone was loaded with the evidence. I'd practiced what I'd say. The appetizers had just arrived, $32 foie gras, of course Greg's pick, when he cleared his throat and reached across the table. "Lauren," he said with that same courtroom voice I once found charming, "we need to talk." I braced for it. Maybe he suspected what I knew? Instead, he said, "I'm leaving you." He looked me in the eye, probably using some trick he learned in that $5,000 negotiation seminar his company sent him to, and said, "I've fallen in love with someone else." I stayed still. Legal training took over. Don't react. Gather facts. "It just happened," he said, rushing to fill the silence. "We tried to ignore it, but some things are meant to be." "Who?" I asked. I already knew, but I needed to hear him say it. "Ashley." Even expecting it, hearing her name felt like a punch to the chest. The sounds of the restaurant faded as he kept talking. "She gets me in ways you never could. We want the same things." He even had the nerve to look sorry. "You're so focused on your career, Lauren. You always have been." That's when I noticed the signs, the twitch in his left eye, the way he fiddled with his watch. He wasn't telling me the full truth. This wasn't about love. It was about the $1.2 to $2 million I'd found in a recently created offshore account, NextGen's payment for their little betrayal. "How long?" I asked flatly. "A few months," he said, then added like it was a favor, "We're going to wait a respectable amount of time before making things public. We don't want to hurt you more than we have to." Too late. How thoughtful. "There's more," he said, reaching for his phone. "Ashley wanted to come, but we figured that might be too much. She's on standby, though, for closure." He turned his phone toward me. Ashley's face appeared on FaceTime, wearing the earrings I got her for her birthday. She looked nervous, but determined. "I'm so sorry, Laure," she said, using my childhood nickname like she still had a right to it. "We never meant for this to happen." In that moment, staring at both their guilty faces, something in me locked into place. They had no idea what I already knew. They thought this was just about an affair. They were expecting tears, anger, accusations, about betrayal, about vows, about trust. What they didn't know was that I'd already sent myself every bit of proof of their corporate sabotage, that I'd tracked every shady file transfer, every secret meeting, every questionable bank deposit. While they were planning their exit from my life, I was planning their entry into a federal case. I smiled. "I see," I said calmly, folding my napkin. "Well, I hope you two find happiness." Their faces twisted in confusion. This wasn't the reaction they'd rehearsed for. "You're not upset?" Greg asked, suspicious now. "Oh, I'm feeling a lot, Greg. But I've never been one for public drama." I stood, smoothing my dress. "Enjoy your dinner. I've lost my appetite." "Lauren, wait," Ashley called through the phone. "No," I said, finally letting some steel into my voice. "I don't think I will." I walked out of Canlis with my head held high, nodding politely to the host who looked concerned as I left alone. Once outside, I took my first real breath in what felt like hours. In the Uber ride home, I blocked both their numbers and started putting my contingency plan into motion, just in case tonight turned out exactly the way it had. First, I emailed Meridian's CEO requesting an urgent meeting the next morning. Then I organized all the evidence into a clean, clear report. Finally, I forwarded everything to my contact at the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division, Special Agent Tamara Wilson, who graduated a year behind me at W. That night, I slept better than I expected, considering my personal life had just blown up. Maybe because I knew what was coming next. The following morning, I arrived at Meridian HQ earlier than usual, presentation ready. CEO Jackson Chin met me in the conference room, concern on his face. "Your email said it was urgent. Are you okay?" "No, Jackson. I'm not. And Meridian won't be either if we don't move fast." I connected my laptop to the projector. "There's been a major data breach." For the next hour, I laid everything out, logs showing Greg's credentials used to access sensitive files, anonymous emails coordinating transfers, bank records with payments from shell companies linked to NextGen. "Are you sure?" Jackson asked, looking pale. "Absolutely," I said, clicking to the final slide. "And there's something else. The NextGen employee helping make this happen is Ashley Thompson. My sister." His eyes widened. "Lauren, I don't even know what to say." "It's personal and professional," I said. "I've already contacted the FBI. They'll want to speak with you. But I wanted Meridian to be ready first." He was quiet for a moment. "What do you need from us?" "Full cooperation with the investigation," I replied. Then after a short pause, "And I want to lead the internal response team. I found the breach. I want to fix it." He nodded slowly. "Of course. Greg's due in about 30 minutes. I'll have security bring him straight here." What followed was a blur, security, HR, Meridian's legal team assembling. And then Greg, confused and tense, being escorted into what had turned into a tribunal. "What's going on?" he asked, then spotted me. "Lauren? What is this?" I stayed seated while Jackson explained Greg was being suspended during a corporate espionage investigation. The color drained from Greg's face. "You don't understand," he stammered. "This is personal. She's just mad because of Ashley." I finally spoke. "Yes, that's true. But this isn't about that, Greg. This is about you leaking Meridian's confidential data to our competitors. And that's what the FBI will be here to discuss in about." I checked my watch. 20 minutes. His confusion turned to panic. "FBI? Lauren, come on. This is crazy. Is it?" I asked, pulling up the evidence. "Are these fake too? The emails? Server logs? Offshore accounts?" He tried to deny everything, said I'd faked it all, claimed jealousy made me frame him. No one believed him. By noon, he was escorted out of the building with his things in a cardboard box. His ID badge was taken on the spot. That afternoon, my mom called in a panic. Ashley had been taken in for questioning at her office. NextGen's PR team immediately put out a statement distancing the company from her alleged actions. I almost felt bad for them. Almost. Update. I'm blown away by the response to this. A lot of people asked if I was scared of retaliation. The truth is, yes. The night it all went public, I slept with a chair against the door. Someone asked if I've spoken to my parents since. We're working through it. Ashley was always their favorite, and they're still coming to terms with what she did. Has anyone else had to rebuild family relationships after something like this? The fallout hit fast and hard, like watching two avalanches crash through everything. By day 2, both Greg and Ashley were fired. NextGen released a statement denying any knowledge of Ashley's actions and promised full cooperation with investigators. Their stock dropped 14% in one day. Meridian did slightly better. Our stock only dropped 8% before bouncing back after we rolled out new security protocols. Greg tried calling me 17 times from different numbers. Then he left a voicemail that bounced between begging for forgiveness and threatening to sue me for invasion of privacy. I sent it straight to my attorney without even finishing it. Ashley had written this 5-page email, laying out how Greg had manipulated her, how she'd always felt like she was living in my shadow, and how this was her big moment to finally prove herself. She claimed she didn't fully understand the legal consequences of what they were doing. I almost laughed when I read that. She'd dated a corporate compliance officer for 2 years back in college. She knew exactly what industrial espionage meant. My parents were heartbroken. My mom called me in tears, trying to make sense of it. How could this happen? How could my daughters be so far gone that one would sleep with the other's husband? How are we supposed to survive something like this? My dad was quieter. His disappointment came through in the long silences and deep sighs. "We raised you both better than this," he finally said. "You raised me better than this," I said gently. I didn't have an affair. I didn't break federal law. He didn't have anything to say after that. By the 3rd day, formal charges had been filed. The evidence was solid. Greg and Ashley were facing up to 15 years for stealing trade secrets, wire fraud, and conspiracy. Their bail was set at $500,000 each. Their public personas fell apart almost overnight. Greg's LinkedIn, packed with fake achievements and carefully curated connections, turned into a ghost town as people distanced themselves. Ashley's Instagram, once full of chic work outfits and hashtag Monday motivation quotes, disappeared entirely. Reporters started calling. Old acquaintances texted for details. Even distant relatives came crawling out of the woodwork with their opinions. I ignored them all. I focused on the internal investigation at Meridian and on pulling myself back together. At the end of the week, Jackson called me into his office. I thought maybe he'd say thank you, maybe hand me a small bonus for catching the breach. Instead, he offered me a promotion. "We're creating a new role, Chief Information Security Officer," he said. "You'll oversee both the legal and technical sides of our data protection. The board unanimously agrees you're the one for the job." The pay bump was huge. The authority? Even better. But the validation? That was priceless. That weekend, I moved out of the house Greg and I had shared. I took only what was undeniably mine. I left behind the wedding photos, the souvenirs from our trips, the illusion of a life we'd built together. I found a sleek apartment downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of Puget Sound that made me feel like I could finally breathe. On Sunday night, I got a text from an unknown number. "Visiting hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays from 1 to 4 p.m. If you want to see your sister, she could use a friendly face." It was from Mom. I didn't reply. 6 months later, I was sitting in court as Greg and Ashley accepted plea deals. Their lawyers got them 5 years each, with the possibility of parole after 3. NextGen ended up settling with Meridian for an undisclosed amount, rumored to be over $50 million. My promotion came with stock options that have already doubled in value. Greg looked older. That smug confidence he used to wear like armor was completely gone. When our eyes met across the courtroom, he looked away quickly. Ashley, though, she stared right at me. Her face gave nothing away. Part of me wondered if she was already planning her comeback, maybe a memoir about how she got pulled into corporate crime by her sister's husband. My parents sat on the other side of the courtroom, choosing to support Ashley through it all. We still talk now and then, strained, awkward conversations about surface-level things. My mom keeps suggesting we all go to therapy as a family. I keep suggesting we deal with reality first. As the judge read the sentencing, I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel satisfied. Not even angry anymore. Just a calm certainty that I had done the right thing. The justice system would handle their legal punishment. Life would take care of the rest. I've been seeing someone new. He's a cybersecurity specialist I met during Meridian's systems overhaul. He laughs at my corny tech jokes and never questions why I'm so paranoid about double-checking my security settings. Last week, he asked if I wanted to meet his family. I said yes, even though the idea still knots up my stomach. Trust doesn't come easy these days. Maybe it shouldn't. After court, I walked past the reporters waiting outside. I didn't give them a comment. Instead, I headed to Pike Place Market, bought a ridiculously oversized bouquet of dahlias, and took them back to my apartment, my peaceful, secure, high-rise home with its incredible view. Some nights, I still wake up wondering what I missed, what warning signs I ignored. But other nights, I sleep soundly, knowing that while they thought they were ending my story at that anniversary dinner, they were really setting the stage for my next chapter. A few weeks after the sentencing, I ran into someone from the old days, Lena, a former colleague who'd left Meridian a couple of years ago. We bumped into each other at a cafe near the waterfront. She recognized me first. I almost didn't say anything, she laughed, setting down her chai. You look different. Lighter, maybe? I shrugged. It's the lack of betrayal and felony charges. She laughed, but her eyes were searching mine. I heard everything about Greg, about Ashley. People talk. I'm sure they do. Lena leaned in. I just want to say, I think what you did was brave. A lot of people wouldn't have come forward, especially with family involved. I didn't know what to say to that. Brave wasn't how it felt. Necessary, maybe. Unavoidable. But not brave. Still, I appreciated the gesture. We exchanged numbers and promised to keep in touch, though we both knew we probably wouldn't. That night, I stood at my window watching the sun sink behind the water. The city sparkled below me, alive and indifferent. I thought about all the ways my life had changed in less than a year. There was a time when I thought stability came from predictability, marriage, career, family. But now I realized stability was something internal. Something earned. Something claimed. A few days later, I got a letter. A real one. Handwritten, postmarked from the prison. It was from Ashley. The writing was tight and neat, her familiar cursive that used to fill our shared notebooks when we were kids. She wrote about the monotony of prison life, the programs she was attending, how she spent her days reading, thinking, sometimes crying. She didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't even ask for a reply. She just wanted me to know that she was sorry not just for what she'd done, but for who she'd become. She admitted she'd known the risks, that she'd ignored the warnings, that she'd justified everything because of jealousy, ego, desperation. I don't expect you to believe me, she wrote. But I needed to say it. Not for redemption, just for truth. I folded the letter and slid it into a drawer. I wasn't ready to respond. Maybe I never would be. But it didn't feel like manipulation this time. It felt like a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. A small, human crack. Later that month, I met my boyfriend's family. His parents were kind, warm people who welcomed me without reservation. His sister asked about my job and said she'd read about Meridian's data breach settlement in the news. I gave her the short, sanitized version. She didn't press. After dinner, he walked me to my car and slipped his hand into mine. You okay? He asked. Yeah, I said. And for once, I meant it. I'd been rebuilding my life piece by piece. Not as revenge. Not even as recovery. But as a reclamation. The life I was creating now wasn't about proving anything to anyone. It was about living without illusion. Without fear. With intention. Still, there were moments when the past would tap me on the shoulder, a certain song on the radio, an old photo that slipped out from a book, a flash of memory that felt too sharp. But these moments no longer unraveled me. They reminded me of everything I'd learned, everything I'd survived. Sometimes I'd see photos of Greg and Ashley from years ago, smiling, successful, unbothered, and wonder how much of it had been real. Maybe none of it. Maybe some. But that question no longer haunted me. The truth was, I'd changed. And I liked who I was becoming. I started speaking at cybersecurity conferences. My story, once something I wanted to bury, had become a case study. I focused on ethics, whistleblowing, and internal trust structures. I spoke with startups about risk mitigation. I advised major corporations on data governance. One afternoon after a talk, a young woman approached me, probably in her mid-20s. She had tears in her eyes. I just wanted to say thank you, she said quietly. Hearing you today, it gave me the courage to speak up about something I've been ignoring for too long. That was the moment it hit me. All the pain, all the loss, it hadn't been for nothing. My story wasn't just mine anymore. It had weight. It had value. It had impact. Around that same time, I finally agreed to go to a therapy session with my mom. Just the two of us. It was awkward at first. She cried a lot. I mostly listened. She admitted she didn't know how to reconcile loving both her daughters when one had done something so unforgivable. I want us to be a family again, she said. We are, I replied softly. Just a different version. Healing isn't linear. It doesn't come with closure. It comes with choices. Every day, I choose peace. I choose truth. I choose myself. The anniversary of the breach came and went quietly. I spent it hiking with friends, then drinking wine on a rooftop as the sun dipped below the horizon. No headlines. No drama. Just a simple, good day. One evening, I stood in front of my apartment's full-length mirror, dressed for a gala where I was being honored for contributions to cybersecurity. I looked at the woman staring back at me, strong, steady, clear-eyed. She didn't look like someone who'd been broken. She looked like someone who had rebuilt herself with stronger bones. When I stepped onto that stage later that night, I didn't talk about betrayal or revenge. I talked about integrity, about the power of one decision to change the course of many lives, about courage, the quiet kind that doesn't roar but still refuses to back down. After the event, my boyfriend found me by the bar. You ready to head out, future tech legend? He teased. I laughed. Almost. I turned back to take one last look at the room. It was filled with people who respected me not because of what I'd endured, but because of how I'd responded. That mattered. I grabbed his hand, and together we walked out into the night. This wasn't the ending I imagined when it all fell apart. It was better.